Most epic punches by historical figures. Didn't think you'd learn something today? Well, get uncomfortable because you're about to see these good guys of history in a whole new light. Theodore Roosevelt. In 1905, Theodore Roosevelt wasn't just running the country. He was also dodging punches. Roosevelt loved boxing and often invited sparring partners to the White House to keep himself sharp. But during one match, an army officer landed a powerful blow directly on Roosevelt's face. The punch caused permanent damage, blinding him in his left eye. Roosevelt kept the injury a secret, refusing to let anyone think he was weakened. He also got shot, but the tough guy didn't seem to notice. Harry Houdini. Harry Houdini had made a career out of defying death, but in 1926, one punch was all it took to seal his fate. Known for his toughness, Houdini often let people punch him in the stomach as part of his act. But when a college student named J. Gordon Whitehead struck him unexpectedly, Houdini wasn't prepared. The magician took several hard hits without bracing himself. Days later, he was dead, his appendix ruptured and his body overwhelmed by infection. You may escape a lot of things, but not your own appendix. Richard the Lionheart. In 1199, Richard the Lionheart was leading a siege on the castle of Chalus in France, a battle he expected to win easily. But a local peasant, furious at the devastation Richard's forces had caused, decided to fight back. He got close enough to land a punch on the king's face, a small act of rebellion that momentarily distracted Richard. Moments later, a crossbow bolt hit the king. The wound became infected, and Richard died soon after. His death plunged England into political chaos, but a legendary uppercut lives forever. Years before Ulysses S. Grant and Simon Bolivar Buckner Jr. became Civil War generals, they were just two cadets at West Point with tempers to match. After a prank got out of hand, the two squared off in an impromptu brawl. Grant's punch landed first, knocking Buckner down and ending the fight. But instead of becoming enemies, they became close friends. Decades later, Buckner surrendered to Grant during the Civil War at Fort Donelson. Their fight had started as a childish scuffle. Fighting with your friends is one of those things men do. Muhammad Ali and Sonny Liston. The 1965 rematch between Muhammad Ali and Sonny Liston was supposed to be a fight for the ages. Instead, it became the most controversial knockout in boxing history. Just minutes into the first round, Ali threw what became known as the Phantom Punch. Liston went down and the fight was over before the audience even understood what had happened. Some fans believed Ali's punch was fast and devastating. Others claimed Liston took a dive. To this day, the true nature of that punch remains a mystery. Whether real or staged, both went on to become boxing idols. John Lennon. In 1964, John Lennon wasn't just making music, he was also making enemies. During a Beatles concert, Lennon spotted a heckler in the audience who had been throwing insults for most of the performance. Without missing a beat, Lennon jumped off the stage and punched the man square in the face. The crowd was stunned, but Lennon casually returned to his guitar and continued playing as if nothing had happened. The incident added to Lennon's reputation as the rebellious heart of the Beatles, despite his haircut. Nikola Tesla. As a young boy, Nikola Tesla found himself in a fight for his life. One day, while swimming in a river, a jealous schoolmate tried to drown him. Tesla, panicked but resourceful, fought back the only way he could. He landed a punch right to the boy's face, stunning him long enough to escape. It wasn't the last time Tesla would fight to survive. That same mix of brilliance and grit defined his entire career as he battled rivals and skeptics who tried to block his path to success. He lived his life by a simple formula. If someone tries to drown you, punch them and become the ruler of electricity. Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson's life was full of violence, but one of his most famous fights came before he was even president. In 1806, Jackson faced off against Charles Dickinson in a duel. Dickinson fired first, hitting Jackson in the chest. But Jackson refused to go down. With blood pouring from his wound, he calmly aimed and fatally shot Dickinson. Some accounts claim that Jackson punched Dickinson during the pre-duel confrontation, adding insult to injury before their fateful shots were fired, making Andrew Jackson the first Indiana Jones. You know the scene. George McClellan and Edwin Stanton. During the Civil War, tensions between General George McClellan and Secretary of War Edwin Stanton reached a boiling point. According to some accounts, McClellan was so frustrated with Stanton's interference in military operations that he lashed out during an argument, striking him with a punch to the forehead. The story may be more legend than fact, but just in case, gotta keep those hands up. Winston Churchill. Before Winston Churchill became Britain's most famous wartime leader, he was a young war correspondent with a taste for adventure and trouble. In 1899, while covering the Boer War in South Africa, Churchill got into a bar brawl with a Boer officer. Accounts say Churchill threw the first punch, knocking the officer to the ground. The fight added to Churchill's growing legend as a fearless young man who never backed down from a challenge. That same fearless attitude would later become his trademark as he led Britain through the darkest days of World War II, proving that buying that cane and fedora will only make you look tougher. Like and follow if you love modern history.